go ahead and get started. So, for today, we're going to go over, and do so extensively, the rest of the exercises from last week. If you have any questions on the midterm or whatever else, anything else that we've gone over and covered, we can go over that, and then we're going to hit up Chapter 8, additional prepositions. So last week we ended with exercise 12, so we will do 13 through 19. Any takers for 13? Good.
We were in church, but you were all in the house.
Good. Questions about that? So amen is your imperfect active indicative of Amy. It's first plural. We were in te ecclesia. That's pretty straightforward. In the church. Ate is your imperfect active indicative of Amy. So you were, and then you have your post positive. That just means it comes after the first word, or rather it can't be in the first position. De. That can be and, but, even in this instance it's but you were in tois oikois. Hamartias is a attributive adjective. So in the houses, oh no, not attributive adjective. It's in the houses, and hamartias is in the genitive. It's a genitative construction. In the houses of sinners. Oh, or of a sinner. Sorry. A little off tonight. 14.
Baptizete is going to be baptized. Tous is the. Anthropos is going to be man and people. The pistus is going to be a is that a substantive?
Mm-hmm.
No. Pistus. Faithful. Okay. Okay.
Well, it's so you have tous anthropos, right? Tous anthropos. Tous pistus. So you can write it that way, or you can write it this way. Tous pistus. those are your attributive constructions. And they both mean the faithful men.
Oh, okay.
So notice that your article is with the adjective in both instances. If it were to be a predicate, then it would have had to be, let me get this right. Who's on pro who's pistus.
Okay.
Or pistus to Sanfrecus. Anthropus, yeah.
Okay.
And
So
that-
when it's like when the article is almost parallel between the noun and
But it's just anytime, the way that I had you memorize it is
Yeah.
anytime the article is with your adjective.
the. Okay.
If it's with a noun and not with the adjective, then it's predicate. So this would be the faithful men. And this would be the men are faithful.
Okay.
And you can get this translation as well if you just add tus, pistus.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So, I'll just take this one clause at a time.
Good. Yeah.
So it would just be the faithful men baptized.
What is your? Do you have a nominative there?
Let's see. Not, yes, it's implied in the verb.
Okay.
So, that today is,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Second plural.
So you all baptized the faithful men.
And let me correct you on one other thing.
Okay.
And this is one of those tricky ones where we have
You all
to.
did baptize.
Not quite. So our lexical form is what? Baptizo, right? And here we have baptizete. So we have the augment, and you translated this as you baptized. That would be an aorist, right? Simple past tense, no progressive element to it. This, though, in order for it to be an aorist, would have to look like baptisate. So your true word is baptid with a D and a delta plus a sigma. Your delta drops. You just have the sigma, and then we have the sigma alpha for the aorist. So that you have this zeta still here from baptizo. So it's just the imperfect,
Okay.
which would be you were baptizing. Does that make sense?
That's tricky.
Yeah.
It's very,
You gotta know the.
it's very true. Yes, the stems are very important. And a lot of the times, for most regular verbs, it's not a problem because you just see the sigma in there. But this one's a little more tricky because you think that the zeta is come about by adding a sigma. But that's not the case. It's true root as a delta in there, and it when it combines with the sigma, the delta drops. You keep the sigma. The easier way to go about figuring out that this is a aorist, I mean this is an imperfect and not an aorist, is here.
Okay.
So your first aorist, the only form of your first aorist that's not going to have the alpha for the connecting vowel is your third singular, and it'll be in. And that form is shared in both the aorist and the imperfect. But this is a second plural, so it's got to have your alpha. This is one of the reasons why getting the forms and learning to recognize them is a little more important, because then we can start to move based upon our base knowledge to figure those things out, the more tricky elements. Okay, so you were baptizing the faithful men.
Okay. Edidas Gamen. The doc is to teach. Edidas Gamen would be we were teaching.
Yes, good. How do you know that's a imperfect instead of an aorist?
Because there's no sigma after the kappa, because I know the stem is the doc. So if it was aorist, I would expect a sigma or something with that sound.
Correct.
After the kappa.
Mm-hmm. So it would be, and you would also expect an alpha there, so it would be
Right.
ededaxamen.
Right.
Good.
Okay, so we were teaching duh is and or but, and it's what do you call it? Post positive?
Yep.
Okay. Is that, did we learn that here, or is that?
I think he had it in the notes.
Okay.
It just, all that means is, it doesn't affect meaning whatsoever, it just means it comes after the first word. It can't be in the first position.
But we translate it as.
Right.
So, name of my teaching. Tus is the, and that's plural accusative.
Good.
Going with mathetas, which is disciples.
Mm-hmm.
So we have disciples in the object.
Direct object, good.
Kai is and. Edaxasazamen. Okay, so this is glorify.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the pastime working. Edaxazamen is, I'm going to guess, imperfect.
Good.
Active.
Yep. And why did you decide that? Because you had that zeta there that sounds like a sigma.
Because there's no alpha.
Good.
Okay, so that would be, we were glorified.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Han Theon is God in the accusative singular.
Good.
So the second clause would be, I'm going to say and instead of but, because those are, there's not really a contrast there.
Mm-hmm.
And we were teaching disciples, and we were glorifying God.
Good.
It doesn't take too much rearranging.
Not for that one. Questions about 14? All right, then 15. If you'd like, I can take it, or, okay.
Es umen kurios tas ponepas
Pane Ras.
pan.
Yeah, you saw that as a,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Paneras up
Mhm.
Mardias
Hamartias, yeah.
as umen. The E is the past, morpheme is the front.
Mhm.
So, it's a form of save. So, kurios is the Lord.
Good.
So the Lord was saving, and then,
Let me stop you there. What is the form of that word, the lexical form?
nominative.
No. So you have so, sin. What does it come from? What word does that come from?
So,
So,
Rome.
what letter here?
I thought it was a Z.
Yes, zeta. So, zo. So this is when you're parsing, which you were beginning to do, this is why it's very important to go back to the lexical form again. It's because we need to find out if there are any sort of changes that take place. So you did observe the past time, morpheme, and the epsilon augment. And then we have our person number suffix, which is, what person number?
Third singular.
Good, third singular. And then we have sos, which is the stem that we're using. So we've got a change that's taken place from the zeta to the sigma. So when you add a zeta with a sigma, you drop the zeta, you just get the sigma, and we don't have the alpha, no alpha, because it's a third singular. So this is not the imperfect, but the aorist. Because we have augment plus sigma plus connecting vowel, which happens to not be the alpha here, because we have the third singular as our ending.
So the Lord saved the evil woman from sin.
Correct. Sorry, your real root again here was not that, but sowed. So the delta plus the sigma. So yes, the Lord saved.
Tas poneras, plural feminine, and it's evils. So it's evil in the feminine form, so therefore it's plural women, evil women, from hamartias, from sins.
Good. That wouldn't be from sins, though. It would be from sin. Why? I know I'm killing you guys with details tonight. But apa, and this is going to be important because we're going to transition into chapter 8, which deals with prepositions. But what case does apa take? Any guesses?
Well, I thought because it had the AS at the end,
You did,
that was plural.
but, so your feminine or your first declension, pure alpha. We ran through that really quick and I'll do it for you. It's ah, as, on, I, own, ice, os. So it can be your genitive singular or your plural accusative. And the way you translated it was if it was the plural accusative, which is possible, but apa can only take one case, and it can only take the genitive case. So you can't have that hamartias be accusative plural. It has to be genitive singular. I think I still have you caught in
So
headlights.
how did you, so what would it have to change to be, what needed to change to make it plural, if it was sins?
So if it were sins, it would be changed from this is what you have, hamartias. If you wanted it to be plural, it'd have to be hamartion. Because apa can only go with the genitive. So then it becomes a choice between your genitive singular or your genitive plural. Does that help at all?
How can I do wrong?
So the apa actually determines,
The case it's with. So when we studied chapter 5 on page 40, you learned 4 simple prepositions. You learned apa, which goes with the genitive, ace, which goes with the accusative, ek, that goes with the genitive, and in, that goes with the dative. Those are 4 prepositions that only have one case that it can go with.
okay,
This week we're going to learn more prepositions, some of which can have 2 cases that it can go with, and it'll mean something different, and then 3 cases that can go with a preposition. But the ones that we've learned so far have only one case. So whenever you see that preposition, it has to be coupled with the object of the preposition in the matching case.
okay. So we would need to memorize that case with that preposition?
Mhm.
Okay.
And that's even more important, like I said, for this week's lesson, because if you flip on over to the next page, you will see dia, for instance, on page 58, can go with the genitive and mean through, but if it's with the accusative, it's because of. It's a way of streamlining the uses of your prepositions to not have as many, but can mean more, and still be precise.
And the forms of the prepositions themselves won't change, just what they match with?
The forms of the prepositions will change, but not with regard to that.
Okay.
Just like we had kai, no, not kai, but we had, I don't know if we covered it, but apa in front of certain words can become op.
Right.
And he may not have covered that yet. He may be covering that in the next chapter.
Okay.
Yep, he covers that in the next chapter. So we'll save that for a few more minutes. We'll go ahead and run through a couple more exercises. Number 16.
All right. You want to do this one together? You want to read it? You want to read it?
I'll read it. Larus, Alethea,
Epistuon, sorry.
De Paneiroi Ta Evangelion.
Very close. Euangelion.
Okay, so uk is not. Elegete is speak with the pastime morpheme. Ente is going to be imperfect. You plural.
Mm-hmm.
So you all were speaking.
Don't forget your ook.
You all were not speaking. Lagus is word in the plural accusative, so
Okay.
words is what is being spoken. Aletheos is truth. As is going to be a genitive.
Good.
So words of truth. Okay. Epistuon is believe. So it's got pastime morpheme with euon is going to be third person plural. Or it could be first person singular.
Could be. So go and see if there is any help.
Okay. So it's going to be I or they were believing. The is and or but.
Keep going.
Okay. Pomeroi is evil. Holy is plural nominative.
Good.
So that would be evil ones. The gospel in the is going to be singular accusative. Okay. So you all were not speaking words of truth for that first clause. And the evil ones were believing the gospel.
Yep. Very, 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 very close. Only one minor thing. Not the evil ones, just evil ones.
Evil ones, okay.
Because we don't have an article with it.
Okay. So that.
But it seems as if they're, I mean, it's kind of a give and take here. It all depends on the context. Right now we don't have a broader context, so I prefer it if you just say evil ones instead of making it definite. But it seems within the context that the evil ones are known, so.
Okay. Does that ook only apply to that first clause? Okay. And since evil ones was nominative plural, I rule out the epistuon being in the first person.
Right. Very good.
Why did they put the word believing but evil one's gospel? Why did they arrange it that way?
Why? Because they can.
The Greek.
But no, this is the normal word order, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is our normal word order for Greek, if you recall?
Verb, subject, object.
Verb, subject, object. Now it looks like it's out of that order because we have verb, conjunction, subject, object. But remember, this conjunction cannot occupy this place because it's dead. If we had used kai, then we could have kai VSO. Kai, verb, subject, object. But he's used de instead. In this instance, I think we could safely say that the de is contrastive because of the context. You were not speaking words of truth, but evil ones were believing the gospel. Translating de that way is purely a contextual thing. You get that from the elements within the paragraph or clause or sentence. 17.
Exen, Okurios, Charon, Kai, Irene, and Cosmo.
Teocosmo. Axen is the imperfect form to have. Good.
Echo. And so it's, and Okurios is the Lord. Charon is joy, Kais, and Irene is peace. N is in, and then we have Cosmos, which is the world. The Lord was having joy and peace in the world.
Good.
Okay.
18.
Sorry.
And Cosmo, and then Cosmos, Book, Alavi, 10, Alexia.
Oh, so, N is in. To Cosmo is the world, and that is in the dative.
Into Cosmo.
And okay. He was? Okay. Thanks. There's going to be an and or but. The cosmos, so the this time it's gonna be in the, yes, nominative singular. Book is not. Labe is, take, receive?
Mhm.
Okay. So pastime, A is gonna be, third person singular.
Mhm.
He was taken.
All right, let me pause you again.
Okay.
And labe, what verb is it from?
Lambano?
Good. Lambano. Do you know much about second aorists? We covered them more in depth last week.
Just that funky things happen with letters switching around.
Okay, so if we had this in the imperfect, this is our present. If we had it in the future, it would be, let's not do the future, because I'm not sure about it. I think it's one of those irregular ones. But if we were to have it in the imperfect, it would be lam, bonin. But we have a different principal part or a different stem for the second aorist, which is lab. We still add our epsilon to it, and we still add our secondary active endings to it. But the one thing that we lose when we go over to the second aorist from the first is that sigma alpha. But what we get in exchange for the sigma alpha is a funky form.
Okay.
Yeah. So think of it as a give and take sort of relationship. The first aorist has the sigma alpha to tell you that it's an aorist. The second aorist has a funky stem change.
Okay.
So this is elabe from lambano, and we know that it's the second aorist because we lose the mu, alpha, nu.
So even though that's a second aorist, if it was in the imperfect, it wouldn't be mixed up.
It would retain
It would
its,
retain it.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so that makes it, he saw.
Good. Or he, no, not saw, but he took.
Oh, yeah, he took, okay, yeah, I'm looking at my, okay, yeah, okay. We used saw for the example of when we were doing the paradigm, so, okay.
Ah.
So he took, Tainali, the truth, and on is going to be in the accusative. Okay, so
Putting it all together.
He was in the world,
Good.
but he did not take, the world did not take, wait, yeah, the world did not receive the truth.
Good. Perfect. $19. Now, I don't know if you might have this question, but into Cosmo Ain, in the world he was. Sounds a little Yoda-ish, but we've got the prepositional phrase fronted for emphasis. He was in the world. He was here, but the world didn't receive the truth. 19. Final one.
It did das then?
It a dachshund?
Okay, I wasn't sure what to do with that. Oh, Messiahs, Kai and I'm not sure what to do with the W with the I and the
Just toe.
top. Okay.
Just think of it as not even having an accent mark or a iota subscript. It doesn't get pronounced.
Toy, toe, iero, kai, and te, sunagoge.
Sunagoge.
You got the past tense morpheme in the front. It's aorist because of the letter, I just forgot the name of.
Xi.
Thank you. And the nominative symbol is Messiah. And you've got two kais in here. So is the Messiah taught, because of the errors, taught both because of the two kais, in the temple and in the synagogue.
Very good. So if you were wondering, masterfully done, by the way, edidaxin, right? In Indian? Yep. So edidaxin comes from didasko. Our true root is didak. Kappa plus our sigma for the aorist equals C. So that's how we get from didasko to edidaxon, ixin rather, and it be an aorist as opposed to an imperfect. All right. Any other questions about that very difficult chapter, chapter 7, imperfect and aorist? I think we still have a couple of hang-ups there, so they're not too bad, but just really the difference between the first aorist and the second aorist. It's difficult to make. It's difficult to visualize because we're always going to see this, and we want to immediately say it's an imperfect because of the fact that you don't have that sigma alpha there. You don't see it. Either that, or when you get to the second aorist, you will see the same sort of thing. You'll have the epsilon. You won't have the sigma alpha because you have a different stem change. And either you'll become so accustomed to seeing it and not realize it's an aorist and just think that it's an imperfect, or you won't know the root at all because you haven't memorized that. You won't know that, for instance, apon means I said. And it is from Lego, kind of, sort of. So those are things you just have to memorize, apon and adon, for that matter. Adon coming from arao. Those are things that you have to look in that chapter for, specifically section C, and take note of. Ago becomes a gagon, etc. So, hamartano, that's really one of the most difficult ones to see because it looks so similar. You have ha, mar, tano is your verb, but in the second aorist it becomes hey because the lengthening for the augment, mar, tom. You just lose the slightest bit here. It sounds very similar up front, and you look at it and you want to say that that's imperfect. But you've got stem change here. It goes from hamartan to hamartan.
Okay. Good thing we're not really speaking this.
Okay, so go ahead and take a little bit of a break, and we'll come right back to chapter 8, prepositions. Okay, so chapter 8, additional prepositions. You'll find that this chapter is rather simple so far as concepts are concerned. So far as memorization is concerned, it is probably one of the more annoying chapters for you.
Okay.
Just like prepositions are in general for languages. So here, and I don't know if I can really help you too much in learning this, except for just, you make out your flashcards and you memorize the different glosses for it. But we'll start with prepositions that have two cases. Dia means through when you find it with the genitive. So your example there is dia tesges. Tesges is in the genitive, so it is the object of dia. So it's going to mean through, whereas dia ton kurion is with the accusative, and it means because of the Lord, as opposed to the previous, which is through the earth. Kata means against with the genitive, and according to with the accusative. So you will find when you open up your Greek Bible, kata markon, which means according to Mark. Or kata tu namu, that's with the genitive, that's against the law. And you see there he's got a little note, just for your own benefit. Kata hemeron is abbreviated to kath, hemeron. That doesn't change the definition of the adverb, the preposition. It's just that you have a word with a rough breathing mark after. So it changes it to, it aspirates. Phonological stuff. Just know that it changes to kath, hemeron, instead of kata. But that just is an idiomatic for daily, according to the day. Meta is with, when you find it with the genitive, or after with the accusative. Peri is around, about with the genitive and around with the accusative. Huper is for when used with the genitive, and it is above, rather, with the accusative. Hupa is by with the genitive. So, hupa tu kuriu would be by the Lord. It was done by the Lord, not beside. And with the accusative, it is under. Hupatain gain is under the earth. And then you have two prepositions here with three cases. Epi, this one you'll love, can be used with the genitive, dative, or the accusative. And it all means upon. And you see his little note there that the reason they used it with three different cases earlier in the language was there was some sort of a differentiation between the uses, but here in Koine Greek, those lines have become blurred. And para, this one you like a little less. With the genitive, it's from. With the dative, it is with. And with the accusative, it is beside. Paragraph 59, you have a little bit of a visual. The slight problem with the visual is that it doesn't have all of the uses. These are just the directional uses of those prepositions. So in is in the circle. You can figure out the rest. Ace is going into. Although, remember we made the comment earlier in class, I think, one of the classes, that the difference between ace and in have become blurred as well. They've been used interchangeably for one another.
An interesting little diagram, I've never seen one like that.
Your English teachers, or at least mine did back in the day, used to say, think of a cup, and prepositions are anything that are around the cup. So like, in the cup, on top of the cup, underneath the cup, beside the cup, etc. Anything that has a relationship to it is a preposition. So that's another way of thinking about it. Any questions on those two pages, or those two sections rather?
Just memorizing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The next little section you might need a visual for. So he shows you all of those different prepositions and what happens to them in certain instances. So Anna, before smooth breathing mark, so before Anna plus a word following it with a smooth breathing mark is going to become on. Does that make sense? It's the same concept that we learned earlier. You can't have, if you have a word that is following if you have the one word that ends in a vowel, and the next word begins with a vowel, then it abbreviates.
Just like English.
Mm-hmm. An versus a.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those differences are a little more drastic. So if you see Anna again, it becomes on before smooth breathing, and it stays as on even with rough breathing. But with auntie, it becomes aunt or aunt in front of rough breathing. And that's just a matter of preference for sound, the way that it sounds when it combines. And there are exceptions that you see there. Peri stays peri no matter what, and pra does as well.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm. Somewhat. The next section, like I said, conceptually this is very easy, or at least I think so. But on the part of the teacher, I feel bad because it doesn't take very much for me to communicate this information to you. As a matter of fact, me telling it to you here is a little redundant because you can read it and understand it just fine. The onus is on you to memorize the differentiations between those prepositions. And
So we're not going to get another one of these handy-dandy kind of...
I mean, I can give you one, but I don't. I think that he's got it here
Yeah, okay.
quite well, and I don't know what I would do that would be different from that.
They're all pretty intuitive as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of figure it out.
A lot of the prepositions are. It's just the multiple meanings for those prepositions. It gets a little tricky. And it doesn't conceptually seem like it is to you right now, but when you're in the middle of translating, knowing which one is which gets a little more dicey. And then you kind of second guess yourself. You're like, just a second, did I have the right one for the genitive, or was it?
Yeah.
And then you,
Genitive or accusative.
yep. And then you start flipping back. And the last thing for you here is compound verbs. So we have the verb ballo, which means what? Mm-hmm. And then we can add ek to it. Ekballo. Any guesses about that?
I throw out.
Yeah. So that's convenient, right? I throw out. I throw out. Great. Gnosko means
Knowledge.
or it's a verb, right? So,
To know.
right, I know or to know. Now, what if I add ana to it?
Ooh.
I know up. No? I read.
Oh, boy. Memorize that one, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, sometimes the etymology of a word, we talked about this last week, sometimes the etymology of a word happens to help us out. We can make connections and piece them together. But it's a very dangerous game to play because sometimes, and very often, we get into fallacious or ways of treating words or word fallacies. So use it to your advantage when you can, like ekbalo, but recognize that that's not the only way that the preposition can morph the word into something completely different. Yes?
You know, well, like, in here, you showed us the word charis, and they said it was joy. And in my mind, I always thought charis was more like grace.
Yeah, and did he list charis like this? As,
What was that?
because,
It was a while back.
I think it was,
I was
wasn't
just
it Tara?
surprised.
right, there's a difference. This
Okay,
is charis,
okay.
and that means grace, and this is a third declension noun. And we have not learned third declension nouns.
Okay.
What we learned, though, was kara.
Yes,
Yes, that's what it was.
that's true.
Mhm.
Okay.
Kara,
And kara.
karas, kara, karan, etc. This gets conjugated completely different. This is
Okay.
charis, karatas, etc.
Okay.
Different declension.
Okay.
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Now we have ekbalo, anagnosko, and things get a little dicey here. When we have a compound verb, our augment on it is not going to take place at the front of the word. It's going to take place between the compound. So it's not going to be ekbalo, it's going to be ekebalo. But I believe that it becomes ex-ibalon. That's just an irregularity of this specific verb. When a compound verb is augmented, the augment is placed between the preposition and the simple verb. Hence, the imperfect of ekbalo is exibalon. Oh, that's right. What am I talking about? Remember, for ek and for ook, for that matter, when you have a vowel that's following it, it's going to become x. So that's why you get that. Does that make sense? It's ekbalo, but once we add the augment in between it, then this has to become xi as opposed to a key. Now, to form the aorist, it's a second aorist form, so it'd be exibalon. There's one lamed missing. It's a difference. Yeah.
So if you're making a past tense, you're not adding an epsilon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, you've added the epsilon in between to make the past tense, right? But to make it, this is imperfect, but to make it aorist, you drop that one to make it aorist. And that has nothing to do with the concept that we're learning now. That has to do with knowing that balo
Yeah, you know that verb.
becomes ball as the stem for your second aorist. Ebalon. So you'd see there, apathnesko becomes apethnesko, or apethneskan. Not entirely sure why he uses those specific words as opposed to other words for examples. I would have probably used one that doesn't have the irregularity within the past tense. That's just me. What do I know? One last thing to note on this specific chapter is that prepositions can be used somewhat redundantly within the New Testament. We have ek, balo, ton, paneron, ek, to, oiku. So if we were to translate this very, very literally, we would translate it, I threw out the evil one out of the house. In our translations, we wouldn't have to do that. We would just say, I throw out, or threw the evil one out of the house. There's another verb, eis erkomai, which means I enter, or I come in. And you might see it, eis erkomai, eis ton oikon. I entered into the house. Rather redundant. But that's idiomatic for Koine Greek, or at least New Testament Greek.
Is it wrong if you don't have repeat?
It's not wrong either way. And now for your vocabulary. You have already covered dia, kata, meta, peri, huper, hupa. He adds that was not in there. No, it was epi, upon, on, at, about, para, from, with, beside. And here are some additional one-case prepositions that you have not learned. We learned before ace in apa, those were, and ek, those were the one-case prepositions we learned, and here are some more. Ana means up. Anti means instead of or in place of. Pra means before. Pros means to or toward or with. Soon is with. And then you have a couple of verbs to learn. Anagnosko means I read. Anoigo means I open. Apathnesko means I die. And ekbalo means I throw out or I cast out. Largely your vocabulary for this week is prepositions. Because, well, ekbalo is really the only one you recognize from the verb. But do make sure that when you learn those compound verbs that you learn the two verbs in the middle with their roots. So you have anoigo, which has oig as its root. And somehow it is a first aorist, aneogsa. Take note of it. Apathnesko's root is thon, and its second aorist form is apethanon. Alright? Let's do the thing that we all love to do. Translate. That way we can start learning the vocabulary before you even go home. Any volunteers for the first exercise?
Sure.
Even though you haven't seen them before?
Yeah.
Narnowski,
Good.
Montases, Parabolic, Paris, Taste, Leia.
Okay, so Anaganosuke is going to be to read. A is just simple you singular present.
Close except for the person.
Oh, it's third.
Mm-hmm.
So it's he reads.
Good.
Okay, the thetes, that's nominative disciple, so a disciple reads.
Good.
Parabolin, parabole, is parable. Aim is going to be feminine ending accusative. I'm just reading parable. Peri is could be either about or around, depending on the tes basileas, which is kingdom, and tes is singular genitive, which tells us that peri is about.
Good.
So, the disciple reads a parable about a kingdom. The kingdom.
Good.
Parable about that.
Good. Perfect.
I think number 2 is, we threw something out of the house.
All right, let's work it out.
Or we,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what tense that is.
All right, so
Ekpalo.
ekpalo is,
Third person plural. I'm not sure.
well, you have this right in your translation, not third
It's
person
not.
plural, first person plural.
I'm sorry, we
Mm-hmm. So we,
do.
and then,
We are throwing?
good,
We
yeah,
are
it's
throwing.
present. We are throwing
Ta-
something out.
ta- Tonera?
Mm-hmm.
Ponera. I don't know what that is.
Paniras.
Poneras.
Do you remember that word at all? Anyone?
Sorry.
That's fine.
Um,
Yep, evil.
Ah,
So this is, okay, so evil is what part of speech? Get our wheels turning.
An adjective.
It's an adjective, good. So panera is an adjective.
Seems to be used as a noun a lot in these translations.
It does. Is there a noun that it is modifying? Let's see if we can find one.
ta?
What now?
I don't know what ta is.
Ta is the definite article, just the.
It is the.
And then we have ek to
We are
oiku.
going
So,
the something out of house.
so out of the house. So ek is a preposition and to oiku is the object of the preposition. So it's not going to be the noun that is modifying our adjective. So we have a lone adjective. What kind of use of that is it then? Substantive adjective. It's not subjective adjective. Substantive. All right then. How do we translate a substantive adjective? We translate it like a noun, right? So evil, and we need to do one other thing. We have ta pane ra. And remember that when we translate adjectives as nouns, that sometimes we need to figure out what gender it is. Because it can be evil women, it can be evil men, it can be whatever. So what gender is this? Yes,
Oh my.
it is. And we wouldn't know that if we didn't have the definite article, right? Because pane ra can be of the as, on. That's the first declension feminine, or first declension pure alpha, rather. But with the ta, we know that that is,
The evil ones?
or not the evil ones, the evil, it's neuter. It's the evil things.
Oh,
Now, why would it be one?
Uh, Because most of the time, if we're going to say evil ones and denote people, we would put it in masculine. So it would be, if we wanted to do that, it would have to be in the tus, pane, Bruce. And that, even though it can be translated evil men, it can also be translated collectively evil ones. Good. We'll work together on that one. How about 3? If you like doing it that way, we can do it that way again.
So we are throwing the evil things out of the house.
Mm-hmm. How about we work on this one together? I'll pronounce. It's a lot more difficult. Unless, did you want to take it?
Now and myself, but
Okay.
you've got the past morpheme of receiving, because you've got the lab in there.
Mm-hmm. So we've got the augment, so that means that it can be one of 2 tenses. Which tenses?
And I believe it's the imperfect.
We have elabon. Can be, and we have this, the epsilon, which means it can be one of 2. An imperfect or what?
An aorist.
Imperfect or an aorist. And what does it come from?
Well, it's changed from lab.
Lambano.
Yeah.
Lambano. So we've lost the mu and the alpha nu. So it's probably going to be second aorist because it's gone through a pretty radical stem change. Lob. So now we've got aorist, active, even though we haven't learned anything else, active indicative. What person number is it? The on ending, onis, in, amen, eta, on. Right, so it can be first singular or third plural. Now we need to find the elements in the context to see if we can define that further.
All right, so something's was taking.
Or received.
Took or received. let's see.
Hi, agathai.
Agatha is good, right?
Mm-hmm. So what's part of speech is that?
Adjective.
Good. So I have a noun that agrees in case, number, and gender with it to be modified by, or to be modifying.
Is Agatha trusting?
It is not trusting.
Like trusted or?
It's good as well.
Okay.
Agathos. So we've got two adjectives here. Strikes us as a little odd, right? What can help to explain? Well, for one thing, they aren't agreeing in person, number, and gender, right?
Right.
So we have to take the first one, which is, what case is the first one?
Nominative.
It's the nominative. And it's alone, it doesn't have a noun to modify. So we can do the same thing that we did with Panera up here. But it's the nominative, so we found our subject. So agathai.
That's the subject?
Mm-hmm. Hi,
And it's plural, right?
agathai, it's plural.
Okay. So
It's nominative, plural. And it's what gender?
Feminine.
Feminine. All right, so translate that now.
The trusting one?
Or the good.
Or the good women?
Mm-hmm. Good women. Now the good women do what? They do the verb. Receive. Good. What do they receive? They receive agatha.
Good something, truth.
Not truth. It's truth would be aletheia.
Sorry.
This is still agathos. He's being very devious with you right now. He wants to stretch and test your understanding of the concepts. So the good women receive agatha. Good. What case?
From the
Good
something brothers?
Yeah, and he doesn't give you very much context here. I would guess it could be the good women receive a good woman. That's possible. Agatha is... Oh, but no, it can't be. He's really, really being devious here. This is just mean. Okay.
Well, there's the data that has an A-N.
Yes, it does, but it would have to have the iota subscript.
Okay.
Okay, so the good women receive.
Good something.
We might be tempted to say, "Are you not recording?" I hope you have. That'd be bad.
Uh-oh.
All right. Anyway, this may be a lesson without a video. All right. So agatha. We might be tempted to say it could be the feminine singular nominative, right? It's got that form, but we've already found our subject. There's no question about that because we have hi that tells us it's got to be the nominative plural. Right? Also,
So, would going on help, and then we come back to that?
We could.
Make it sense?
I can already make the sense for you, and I think that Dale already knows the answer. Do you?
Yeah.
It's,
Neuter.
yes, it's your neuter,
Plural.
plural,
Accusative.
accusative. So what I wanted you to see though is that this can't even be your feminine, because in order for it to be a pure eta of the feminine, it has to be according to epsilon, iota, and rho. And this is not an epsilon, iota, or rho. So if it was to be in the feminine, it'd have to be agathe. Then we have two options. It can be either the nominative plural or the accusative plural. But we've already found our subject, which is the nominative hi, agathai. So it's got to be our neuter plural, accusative. So the good women received good gifts, or good things rather. Apa tu pistu adelphu.
Auto is what?
From?
Apa is
From?
from.
Okay. From the something brethren or brothers?
From,
Beautiful.
yes. And our article there is with the adjective, which means that it's an attributive construction, not a predicate. So it's good brother as opposed to the brother is good, which wouldn't even make sense in this context. So received good things from the faithful brother. All right, and time's up. So we got through through 3. Due for homework. Well, you already know to learn your vocabulary. And translate from 4 until 10.